Hey, how are you? We're gonna do a lesson on arpeggios. So arpeggio is a fancy word for broken chord. That's all it is. It's playing the three notes that make up the actual chord. So when you break them up, you get an arpeggio. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with just simple two strings arpeggios. They're gonna be modeled after a D shape, not a D chord. Just a D shape. So if we played a D shape in a normal D chord, those are the three notes. Plus we're also playing, excuse me, an open D string for a D chord. Right now all we want to do is kind of break it down into the three notes. So for example, a D major chord is D, F sharp, and A. So that's called a triad. Those are three notes that build up a D chord. So D, F sharp, and A. When you play your D chord, you're adding in a couple of other notes. Open D string, then there's an A note, then another D, an F sharp, and an A. So what we're going to do is just grab three notes. Now the notes are 1, 3, and 5. Okay, a first, a third, and a fifth note. What that means, it's very simple. It's just the first, the third, and the fifth note out of the scale. So in a D major scale, the first note is a D, the third is an F sharp, and an A. But it's going to be a lot easier because all we care about is the shape. The only thing you need to know is what the root note is. The root note we're going to use will be on the B string, the second string. So there's two shapes. Now we're just going to think of them as triangles. Okay, it's that easy. We have a major, which is happy, and a minor, which is sad. Okay, so the major shape, we'll start with that one first. Like I said, your root is on the second string. Your third is going to be one fret behind it on the E string. Your fifth will always be one string lower and 2 frets away from your root, note number 1. So we got note number 1, number 3, and number 5 out of the scale. So get used to the 1, 3, 5 kind of terminology. 1, 3, 5. So that's a major. That's happy. To make it sad or a minor, we flatten our third. So now we're 2 frets away from our root on the next string down, but our fifth will always be 1 string lower and 2 frets away. A 5 chord is a power chord. So imagine when you see in tabs, you see A5 or G5 or whatever, all that means it's a power chord. It's your root note and the fifth note out of the scale. Doesn't matter if it's a major scale or a minor scale. This is always going to be the 5. It's called a perfect fifth, okay, because it's always the same distance from the root. Anyway, so back to here, you're always going to end off with like a power chord shape. So that's the easiest way to remember it. So we got 1, 3, 5. When you see guys sweeping, they're just adding in another 5 note, number 5. And that's located above the root, excuse me, behind it. So 1 fret behind it and 1 string higher. Okay, so it doesn't matter where we are. Here's a D note, here's an E note. Okay, so I'm just going to play, there's an E major arpeggio. If I want to make it a minor, I just flatten my third. So now we got like an equal triangle. If you look down on your guitar, root, this is a minor shape. So you're going to have a gap between your root, number 1, here's your gap, and your third note. And you'll also have a gap between your root and your fifth note. So these can move anywhere you want. Okay, so here's a B note. That's the 12th fret on my B string. B major arpeggio. B minor arpeggio. C major, C minor. Okay, D major. If you notice, here's another D. It's a full octave away from that first D that we played. So imagine your open string is also your 12th fret. Okay, so there's your octave. So if we went open, first fret, second fret, third fret, there's our D note. Open, pretend that's open because that's the 12th fret. First fret, second fret, third fret. They're just an octave apart. Okay, so this is just a 2-string arpeggio. Now let's look at some examples. You play them over chords, okay? So let's do a progression like E minor, D, and C. Okay? Here's a song that you might know. Okay, that's the interlude in Master Puppets by Metallica. So James is playing an E minor. So Kirk is matching him. Here's an E note. Okay, that's my 17th fret on my B string. B, so that's the octave, same as the open string. C, B and C don't have a sharp, so they're right beside each other. B does not have a sharp, so B, then C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. Okay, there's your E note. And it's an E minor, so I'm going to have a gap between my first and my third. E minor. Okay, so Kirk's playing it kind of backwards. He's playing his root, then he's going to the 5th first, then the 3rd, and back. Oops. Okay, then the next chord in that progression, so we have E minor, goes to D major. So what he does is he plays a D major arpeggio. There it is there, but again he plays it a little bit differently. So let's go back to the E minor for a sec. Root, or 1, 5, 3, 1. Then he's going to drop down. So here's our D major. Right? There's no gap between the 1st and the 3rd. There's your 5th. So he starts on the 5th, plays the arpeggio backwards. So he goes root, 5, this is the E minor. Then he drops down. Then he plays a total backwards D major arpeggio. Then he hits that D a few times. Then he plays it backwards one more time. This is turning into a Master Puppet solo lesson, but I just want to kind of give you an example, right? So we got... Okay, and then he goes to... James plays a C. So we got E minor, D, he's playing a C9, but that's fine. He can still play a C major arpeggio because it's a C chord. So there's our C major chord, right? So we got E minor, then a backwards D, hit your D a few times, backwards again, then he's dropping down to the 5th of the C major. There's our C major arpeggio, right? And then he fills it in with some other notes. So that's how you play, excuse me, just a simple arpeggio using your 2 strings there. So I'm just going to put on a jam track here, and we'll just see how they kind of fit. I'll pick, the other thing is you want to kind of know what your chords are in each key, but that's another advanced theory lesson, so we're not going to talk about that right now. I'll just do a little bit of jamming over over a progression in the key of A minor, and then we can kind of see when you incorporate your scale in there with the arpeggios, then it kind of gives a bit of life to your soloing, right? I'm just going to load this up. So we're in the key of A minor. There's an A minor, so here's an A note. go up to D minor. E minor. Here's my A scale. C major. There's G. So I'm just kind of messing around there, but that kind of gives you an idea of how your arpeggios fit into whatever lead you want to do. Anyways, I hope that was helpful. Like I said, it's just a very simple, basic arpeggio lesson. Just getting that triangle shape in your head, and then it expands. You just repeat the same 3 notes as you move up. But I'll do another lesson on expanding that into the 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th string, because they're just all based on different shapes. So that was a D-shaped arpeggio based off of a D major or D minor chord shape. All right, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me a message. Thanks a lot. I hope this helps.